Hello, hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of Call Your Coven. I'm Bee, my pronouns are she, her, and I am your resident numerologist.
I'm Jeanna. My pronouns are also she, her, and I am your resident astrologer.
And I'm Meg. My pronouns are she, they, and I'm the resident tarot reader.
And it is May, or almost May, which sounds fake.
Good Christ.
It is fake.
Yeah. And there's a lot to talk about here. And I guess right at the top, we should just be honest that what's been coming forward for all of us this morning is some semblance of Goblin Mode.
Mm-hmm.
Because that seems to very much be the vibe. My notes for this month are also Goblin Mode because I found myself really pulled to quotes again.
Mm-hmm.
And I started just making this list of quotes that were coming forward about the energy of May and the monthly number. I mean, spoiler alert, monthly number of 5. And in 2025, how that felt in tandem with the 9 overall year. And then I remembered that that was how I started the year as well. In January, these poems came forward.
Yeah.
And so that was cool. That felt like a very 9 vibe, that like books were coming forward or like wisdom passed down from other thinkers. That feels very much like in the 9 soup. So get ready for Goblin Mode May.
Yeah. Let's go. Also, I think it's relevant that like we're recording this when we're still in the messy middle of April, and May is going to, I think, be much more energizing. But right now it's like we're trying to hold the hope of the Energizer Bunny that like it's going to happen. I'm going to have energy again. I'm going to want to be active again. Things are going to happen again. Like, someday.
Yeah. I mean, we did talk a lot about April being like a slower ramping up of the energy. So yes, here in the middle, I mean, personally, like there has been a huge win, like big clarity, but also it has come with a waiting period before and after. And so, you know, not to bring back Trickster March vibes, but I feel like April for me has been like, hee hee, it's not exactly how you want it, but you're still getting what you want.
Yeah, that resonates. I feel like my April has been very 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I am making progress in the process of recovery and I am feeling physically better, but I'm having some setbacks. Like I am being able to do some really cool creative projects, including a cool thing with Bee that we're going to tell you about. But, you know, I haven't had the energy to do all the things I want to do yet. You know, it's very like still just stuck in that balance of trying to do the things I want to do without overdoing it, which is always hard.
Yeah, there is one little update, and this is going to be dark, but it might also be a good place for us to start in May because it is happening. But I used the phrase automated April in the previous forecast. And within the last couple of days, the president has used that word, automated, or maybe you can fact check me. Maybe it wasn't him exactly, but it was like either a news release that I read or something that about these El Salvador prison camps that he could send homegrown criminals and that this would be a way of like automating death. And I thought that that was such an interesting way to think about April, because April in a 9 year, it's 4 plus 9 is 13. And that is the death card. And so to have that phrase of like automated April and then to see it be about automating death, I was like, oh God, like what a doozy of a timeline we're in right now.
Yeah.
Well, and Jeanna just sent out a couple of hours ago. I don't want to steal your thunder, babe, if you're about to talk about this, but Jeanna just sent out a great email literally talking about the automation of death and the guillotine and like
AI.
And AI and that place in history, and your wonderful like historical lecture that everybody should listen to because it's very, very informative. But yeah, it's same themes. Like it's that how can we make death and misery as efficient as possible and as cost effective as possible? Like nightmare scenario, like truly nightmarish hellscape shit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really horrifying, and in the way that AI has been such a Pluto and Aquarius signature, and also then having like Neptune come into Aries, and we're going to talk here in May about Saturn moving into Aries, and like all of these particular alignments that historically have looked like making tyranny easier.
Mm.
And and what you were saying, be like the automating, how do you automate a process like this? And that makes me think too of just how the role of AI in so many of our current overlord decisions. Like I'm gonna bungle this because taxes and the economy are not my strong suit in conversation, but how it came out pretty recently that the certain decisions about tariffs had literally been made with a like the use of AI, like culling Wikipedia pages, like that kind of, in theory, this brings ease, but actually it does more harm in the long run. A technology that is that brings that in theory could be helpful, and that perhaps is even developed with the idea of being helpful, but ultimately is utilized as a tool of state oppression and mass casualty and disaster. Yeah, a really really positive note we're starting out on.
Coming in hot.
I originally was not going to say what I said, but I am glad that I did because I do think that it's really important to 5 energy to experience 4 energy. And especially in this 9-year, we're experiencing all of the numbers in their like purest forms. And that means the whole of the energy, not just what you like about it, and or what feels good about it, but also what feels really bad and what's horrifying about each of the energies. And so this automation of death, like, unfortunately, is very 4, and a dictator is very 4, and starting to feel boxed in. And the fact that this is happening about a prison is like too literal of 4 for me to really comprehend in this moment.
Yeah.
But 5 is the breakthrough, but we have to hit the wall first. And so I do think 5 energy is coming right on time because we're starting to also see people gather in resistance, or people starting to say, hey, this is going too far. And at what point are we going to draw the line is very much the energy that we're coming into May with. So in that case, like, I hope it is energizing. And also, I think what we've been saying is that a lot of the transits and a lot of the numbers, and yes, tarot as well, but right now we're in a moment that has all of the markings of violence, and that's upsetting. That's an upsetting energy to be in.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm thinking about the energy that lives between 4 and 5, the like catalyst that causes the shift from 4 into 5, and that breakthrough is such an interesting space to me. It's one I've written about a lot because I think it's one of the hardest and most uncomfortable like transitions, at least in my opinion, of like from number to number, if we're thinking about it in that linear story way, because it has to get so constricted and uncomfortable that we're willing to say, wait a minute, everything's too tight, everything's too small, everything's too closed off. Why have we been doing it this way? Like, how did this tradition start? How did this system start? How did this institution start? What were the earliest rules, and how is this a recurring pattern? Thinking about, yeah, this awful shit in El Salvador and the ways that people are being kidnapped and disappeared. My feed right now, we're recording this on April 16th, but I'm seeing all over my feed right now people talking about the history of chattel slavery and the history of how Auschwitz was not in Germany, and like a lot of this pain being outsourced to other places, but how there are long traditions of those things happening here in the United States. They just weren't always happening to white people. So a lot of white people didn't know about it. And thinking about that as that break from, we've always done it this way, actually, to, but why? And we have to change it. We have to disrupt this, and we have to break free so that we can build something new. But it's scary to break something that's always been there, especially when you didn't realize it was always there. That's really uncomfortable.
I do want to offer that I was thinking about this when I was looking at images that were released from the like gulag concentration camps that
Yeah.
people are being sent to. And I was like, this is different. I mean, it's the same. It's harrowing in how much mirroring we look at images that we now have of the Nazi concentration camps. And like even thinking about how ships that transported and like kidnapped people from West Africa, like how cramped that we understand the architecture of like how people were like chained and kept so
Yeah.
close together in like just a refuse horrible conditions. But like we have that now. I was thinking about like 1940s US, like they didn't have images, like concentration camps weren't really known about stateside until they were I hesitate to use the word liberated, but until they were liberated, like there wasn't a lot of knowledge of concentration camps, certainly not coverage in the media, certainly not images like that coming out. Whereas just because of the world we live in, and this is again technology, good, bad, like is there a morality to technology? But a benefit certainly is that as horrifying as what's happening is, we see that it's happening. Like there are recordings of people getting taken off the street. Like the news is so fast. The fact that these images, I think, also were really galvanizing folks. I saw so Chuck Grassley is a very old, very storied Iowa senator who should no longer be in office because, Lord, that man's about to keel over. As someone who is from Iowa and like does not and understands how complicated the politics are there, I was so heartened to see him get grilled by a room full of his voters, like these old white dudes, old rural white dudes in Iowa being like, when are you bringing that guy home? He shouldn't be there. I'm like, this is galvanizing people. It maybe isn't happening as fast as is ideal for those of us who have been here, but like it is really cutting across it's cutting across a lot right now, and that is very heartening to me.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about too. Her name escapes me. I think her first name is Kat, but I know she's not the only one, and I know there's a number of folks. But there are some like younger, I think millennials, but also Gen Z kind of generation, more progressive politicians, like Democrats and leftists.
Mm-hmm.
I hesitate to use any word too specifically because I can't remember who they all are, and so I don't know their politics. But who are basically like starting to run against incumbent Democrats, who are on the older side, who are in their 70s and 80s, who have been there forever.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to go into the comments. Don't read the comments, but also I always read the comments. So, but going into I know, right? I'm like, show me the seedy underbelly. I want to see all the nasty shit people are saying. But in the comments, there's always people being like, she's a Democrat. Why are you bothering to run against a Democrat? Like, she's been on our side. She's been doing good. And it's like, okay, but also look at the state of things. Look at how many people are still afraid to talk about Palestine. Look at how much stuff is getting swept under the rug, and we're settling for just this very whatever. So I think it's great. I think it's great to have younger people coming in and trying to push the party more left, and like this overtone window, we're so far to the right here in the United States. It's insane. So anyway, it's that attempt to break through, and we're still seeing people that would actually love to potentially have a more progressive person in that seat still finding themselves pushing back because it's uncomfortable or because it challenges what they were willing to tolerate.
Yeah. All of this is right on track for the astrology of the year. It's right on track. Like Neptune moving into Aries, Saturn moving into Aries, Pluto being in Aquarius. Like given historically what we see when those alignments are happening together, like, yeah, we're none of this. It is horrible and awful and depressing and upsetting. And also it is so unsurprising, not only for students of history, but also for folks who like are students of the astrological history and know like this is American Civil War. This is the Catholic Church splitting multiple times. This is great schisms of belief and reevaluating what we come together for.
Okay, Meg said challenge what you're willing to tolerate. And I think that is such a juicy phrase to get into the numerology of 5, because one of the things that I say for people, to clients in a 5-year, is like, figure out what makes you feel calm, figure out what makes you feel centered, figure out what makes you feel regulated, and then practice getting yourself to that place from another place. Expand that window of tolerance so that you can tolerate more, because change energy is uncomfortable, even if you want the change that is coming. So I think there is a lot of discomfort in our future. That's okay. We can get through that. We could all get through the discomfort. And so, what I want to think about for May, let's just go through some of the keywords for 5. Okay, 5 is the number of sudden and unexpected change. So 5 has this inherent shock value to it. And I think that's a little bit of what Meg is saying as well, with this people who think that they want something. We'll just broaden it out of politics. You know, people who think that they want something, and then when faced with what that reality looks like or would ask of them, there's oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know I would have to do that. I didn't know that I would have to participate in that way. Oh, I thought it would feel better. Like kind of that surprised energy. On the flip side of that, 5 is switching gears quickly and with abandon. So it's this really, like Jeanna was saying, energizing energy of, hey, okay, out with the old, in with the new, bada bing, bada boom. Like 5 has a lot of like inherent kind of energy and jazz to it, which I think is really fun to think about 5 from like an improvisation energy. You know, if you're improving, like I am literally right now, you are in the room with people, you are paying attention to what is happening, you are responding to what's being thrown down, you know, and picking things up and making your own jazz with it or your own comedy with it and throwing it back. So there is this inherent element of 5 that you have to be engaged. You have to be present and accounted for and listening. And it's that presence, which actually the 4 teaches us, you know, that's a beautiful way of looking at 4 is like, okay, where there's a very be here now energy to the number 4, that then the 5 says, okay, because I'm so present, because I'm so with it, watch what I can do. Look what I can spin into something else. So I do think on a personal level and maybe a collective level, a 5-month in a 9-year May, we're throwing caution to the wind. But we are asking, how does this serve? We're thinking big picture. We can't be too much in the messy middle or we'll forget kind of what we're going for. So we're keeping big picture. How does this serve either ourselves or others? How do my actions soften? How do my actions sting? And then also, because 5 is an emotional number, it lives in the gut, it's in the stomach. 5 is very much the flare and fizzle. Stacy, my wife, is a double 5 life path public persona, and we share that public persona of 5. So we both access anger in a really interesting way. But the flare and fizzle is totally Stacy. She's like, when it happens, everything is awful. The world is crumbling. That's like plate smashing energy. And then before you know it, she's like, oh, yeah, that wave passed. Like, no biggie. I'm on to the next emotion. And I'm over here like, what? I'm so very upset about what has just happened. Like,
this is also our marriage, not to interrupt you, but this is also us.
Are you the flare and fizzle, Gina?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The 5 life path of flare and fizzle? Yes, I am.
The 11 crying in the corner? Yeah, 100%.
Yes, 100%.
Not literally.
My 8 life path is like, I've taken everything to the depths. So like, 100%. How can I be over this? But I do think that's kind of the energy of May, and especially in a moment where the more chaotic the powers that be can make things, the more distracted we are, the more we can separate, the more we aren't present, we aren't thinking with all of our wits, you know, we don't have our wits about us. But I feel like the flare and fizzle in May could feel like all of this stuff happening outside and us like being like, wait a second, don't go on to the next thing. Like, I know you fizzled and you're moving on, but like, there's something here for us. 5 is also 14. And I did ask Meg's permission to talk about a tarot card.
Talk about whatever you want, babe.
But I think about temperance being the teacher card of 5 and the relationship between the Hierophant and temperance. And I think temperance is like I said, the teacher, like a really good teacher for Spitfire 5 energy that likes things a little messy. Like everyone's got to watch out. Your inner little nasty is going to have some fun in May, and sometimes that's helpful and sometimes that's not. But temperance really reminds us to experience everything in moderation. So this doesn't mean don't have the thing. It just means too much of a good thing can also turn bad. So it's the card depicts like an angelic presence in most of the traditional cards. But I feel like this does ask us to stay open to divine intervention, which I really love because 5 is like boots on the ground, us making the change, us making it happen. And then 14 is like, hey, don't forget that you are co-creating, you are collaborating with the forces that are always swirling around us, whether you look to the planets or the cards or the numbers. And so there is a crux here for miraculous energy, and everything feels very fertile. So art is the practical advice for for May, which I really love. And art in a general broad sense, you don't even need to be an artist to engage with art in the month of May. But I think because 5 is also so much about freedom and liberation and playfulness, and you're a kid, you don't know the rules or you don't care. Fuck the rules. You know, I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to sit on the ground in my bedroom and construct whole worlds in here. Like that is very much, we're not escaping, right? Great art responds to the moment at hand, but also we are engaging and alchemizing, which is also very temperance. Like we're pouring a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and we're seeing what we can make. So I said already, quotes came through. And so I have a few quotes that I did kind of just want to read because what came through was if you're not an artist, or even if you are, the Hierophant, I do really kind of think of the Bible sometimes with that authority, or like what's the text that you hold to be sacred or dear. You can even think of the Constitution if you want to. But the act of making a commonplace book, or some call them a junk journal, but this is very Hierophant to me, the notion of compiling your own sacred text. So this is a method of knowledge compiling. It's a book which is often made through found or recycled materials. And it's just a collection or a memory record. It could be a scrapbook, thoughts, ideas, inspiration. And so 5 is the act of gathering. So we're gathering our junk this month. And here are a few ideas to get you started, a few quotes on meditations on freedom. So this one actually comes from Maggie Nelson's book on freedom, 4 Songs of Care and Constraint. And she talks about freedom as a, quote, unending present practice, a process by which you develop a practice for being unavailable for servitude, which I think is so juicy. Coretta Scott King says, freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation. Jean-Paul Sartre said, freedom is what we do with what is done to us, which I think is super on the nose right now for people starting to snap out of this or see things differently. There's a concept called Amor Fati. It was the title of the finale of season 3 of The White Lotus, so you might be familiar with it, but it translates to love of one's fate. And it's the idea that no matter what, every experience, good, bad, beautiful, ugly, it's all necessary. And it's ours to accept on our own journey and even come to love. So this idea of loving what is hard just as much as you love what is good. And then on that point, on Amor Fati, Nietzsche said, I want to learn more and more to see as beautiful what is necessary in things. Then I shall be one of those who makes things beautiful. Amor Fati, let that be my love henceforth. I do not want to wage war against what is ugly. I do not want to accuse. I do not even want to accuse those who accuse. Looking away shall be my only negation. And all in all, and on the whole, someday I wish to only be a yes sayer. And what I love about this Nietzsche idea is that, and it's similar to what the last quote is from Albert Camus, who said, a will to live without rejecting anything of life. So let May be a month where you're collecting and gathering and saying yes to things and surprising yourself with how you want to act and accepting all, like, the whole picture of life, what it means to be a human being on this planet in relationship with people, places, things, systems, structures. See if you can really engage with the whole of life, because only when we really are able to accept what is, then we're in a position of agency to be able to make change. A lot of things in the soup, but I do think March. Whoa. Okay. I do think May will feel cool once we're in it, but I agree. We're just not there yet. We aren't, personally.
Yeah, there's so much you said that I think gels with the astrology, especially around the duality and the flare and fizzle, and just the way that so much of May, well, about half of it is Gemini season, so like that
Yeah.
is the whole thing. If people are watching the recording, I think my face was probably doing funny things because I'm literally working on a project that is I don't watch the White B knows this. We don't watch White Lotus. Didn't know that that was the episode title, but I've been working on a project that is grounded in Amor Fati, like, which is it has it really has a lot of interesting astrological connections. Like, obviously it was named by Nietzsche, but it has its roots in Stoicism, and so there's a lot of interesting writing you get from like post ancient astrologers, like out of the medieval Islamicate and out of Renaissance England, that kind of reckon with this in some different ways. It's really interesting. But that's a different tangent. Astrology for the month. With May, we are finally getting some breathing room astrologically, and like, thank fuck. Everything is direct except Pluto, which is fine because the outers are retrograde for half the year and they're too far away for us to really feel it. But yeah, Mercury's direct, Mars is direct, Venus is direct. Thank God. And we're finally through all the eclipses and through eclipse season. So we finally have a spot of like as smooth as possible sailing with astro weather. If not the most ideal, then at least this month is not adding layers of challenges to the shit that we are trying to do in the world. I feel like there's just been so much activity that like this year so far, especially in Q1, that I've really had to shortchange the lunations in the last few months forecasts. So it's nice that this month is open enough that we can actually talk about the full moon and the new moon a little bit and have some advice around those. First up, we have the full moon in Scorpio because the first half of May is still Taurus season. So full moon in Scorpio on May 12th at 12:55 p.m. Eastern at 22 degrees of Scorpio. So the one thing about this one, it's not that it's like a difficult per se moon, but the sun is closely conjunct Uranus. The moon's next aspect is opposing Uranus. So this tells us, related to what B was saying, that something is breaking free. There is a shaking off of the old, the dried up, the no longer appropriate for a particular situation. Taurus and Scorpio are so much about desire and control. I recently wrote a whole essay about that, which we can just put in the show notes. But with Uranus being involved in that axis, we are questioning or are being pushed to question what we desire. And okay, but what can we control? And I think Uranus often invites like serenity prayer vibes, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So journaling, meditation, mindfulness, really helpful to process. I'll put tack on too. I didn't know what a junk journal was before just now. And that also seems like a really great activity for composting this full moon in Scorpio. So Gemini season kicks off shortly after on May 20th. And this is all that duality and like yes and improv energy. But it's also just really lovely. Like here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're into spring, or at least like fake spring or what have you. The energy is just a little more buzzy. It's a little more, let's get out in the world, a little more connective. It'll be warmer outside for those of us in the North. So it's a great time to catch up with friends you haven't seen in a while, to go to a local meetup about a special interest, or taking a political action. The new moon in Gemini is on May 26th at 11:02 p.m. Eastern at 6 degrees of Gemini. And this moon is much more chill than the full moon, which had Uranus involved. So that's nice. This moon is so much about birthing a new idea or connection. Mercury is right there in Gemini, ruling this new moon. It's very close to the sun and the moon. I think Mercury is like at 2 Gemini, and then the new moon is at 6. So very close there. Jupiter is also still in Gemini at this time, so still co-present. So there's just a lot of support for whatever new ideas, projects, relationships are beginning. This little stretch of days too, actually, like May 26th through May 29th, is really nice for announcements or launches or having important conversations, just to flag that for folks for whom that is relevant. The big news of the month is that Saturn enters Aries on May 24th. Saturn's changing signs for the first time in like 2.5 years or so. It's a big deal. So if you were born between 1967 and 1969, or between 1996 and 1999, check your birth chart, because this might be the beginning of your Saturn return, when we are revisiting our commitments and long-term plans and relationship to responsibility. But Saturn in Aries is not just an important transit for folks who are having that return. Saturn has a 7-year cycle where we are routinely checking in with the structures in our life, like how we are setting or respecting boundaries, what is working, what is not. So this is also a really important 2.5 years for folks who have Saturn in Capricorn. This is the start of your opening Saturn square, where you are stress testing what you learned during your Saturn return between 2017 and 2020. And if you are a Saturn in Libra baby, the early 80s babies, this is your midlife Saturn opposition. And it's another really big check-in time. So there are a bunch of folks who are going to be feeling this one. But we are collectively in a really unique position historically, also, in that Saturn is entering Aries shortly after Neptune entered Aries, shortly after Pluto fully entered Aquarius, an air sign that is sextiling Aries. And then this summer, Uranus will enter Gemini, the air sign that's on the other sextile side of Aries. So it's a very big, momentous shift from earth and water to air and fire that we are in the process of experiencing. Why I'm bringing it up for the Saturn piece is that because Saturn moves much more quickly than the outers, like again, 2.5 years to move through a sign versus 20 years that Pluto will spend in Aquarius. Saturn is really the driver of change over these next few years with the outers, especially while it's in Aries. And like Saturn is not overly comfortable in Aries, which moves much more quickly than Saturn ever wants to. So there is another push pull, flare and fizzle here that might look like big advancements, then a plateau, and like you're processing internally, but you don't realize it because you want to go. And then you have another big advancement a few months or years later, and then another plateau. And there's this tension also because Aries is the start of the zodiac. It's the first sign of the zodiacal year, and it feels very young energetically. Whereas Saturn is like literally characterized as a grandparent or elder or father time. And so this also kind of has Benjamin Button vibes of like an elder buying a sports car, something like that. So it'll be really interesting to see what world events continue to happen as this ingress occurs. I will definitely be keeping a really keen eye. Yeah.
B, do you have anything you want to say before I start talking about the cards?
I don't think so, because there are a few things that I feel like are in my cauldrons, which I'm excited to get back to. So I'll just put a pin in them.
Perfect. Beautiful. Love it. Okay, so the cards, as ever, are wildly relevant, which I love. You know, it makes me feel good that I get to come in last and be like, yes to all of that. So the first card that I have for us to talk about is our theme card for the month of May. And our theme is always just the vibe. It's what kinds of feelings or moods we can expect. It's what kinds of things to be thinking about and embracing and celebrating and exploring both in your individual life, but also as a collective. Our theme card is one of my favorite cards. It's the Magician. And I love this for all of us because I think we need some joy and some excitement and some imagination and some inspiration. The Magician as an archetype is one that I really understand as a energy that sees possibility and potential in absolutely everything. This is the archetype that loves to brainstorm and dream really big and consider everything that could be. And depending on who you are and how you move through the world and how your brain operates and what kind of trauma you're carrying, this might not be particularly comfortable energy. You might be like, "Ooh, Meg, not so much. I'm not into this." Especially if you're someone who much prefers like concrete plans or really grounded clarity or knowing which things are going to happen instead of talking about hypotheticals and ideas and what ifs. Jeanna and I have been talking about this particular thing all week long. So it's very funny that this card came up when I pulled cards just a few hours ago. But
I feel a little attacked.
I know. I was like, there's no way for me to talk about this without Jeanna being like, just talk to me next time. But like, truly, this is the card I pulled, and I thought it was hilarious. But I'm glad we had been talking about this because it did make me want to acknowledge that if this is not actually fun, exciting energy for you, that's totally okay. I just happen to be a Mercury person. So this is just my shit. But whether or not this card is personally comfortable for you, or whether or not the idea of brainstorming and hypotheticals and dreaming big without following through into really concrete 10-point plans is comfortable or joyful, this is a really potent energy for us to be exploring in whatever way is going to feel good for you, both in a personal way and in a collective way. I want you to think about the fact that everything around us is kind of saying no in a way right now. We have a lot of systems collapsing or restricting. We have a lot of people in power saying what they can't do or what they're not willing to do. We have a lot of money getting thrown around. We have a lot of data getting exchanged. It's just, there's a lot of really scary stuff that we can't really control. I wrote all the girls are fighting, and that is kind of how it feels. Like everybody's mad, or at least everybody in power seems to be mad in spite of the fact that they're in power. In other words, it feels like the collective imagination might be too small. And so the medicine of the Magician allows us to kind of reject all of that pearl clutching, we can't possibly do that sort of energy, and instead let our minds start to wander and explore and challenge what we know and experiment with different pathways forward. That is an exercise that is really powerful to start practicing because it allows us to be better at expecting and experiencing new ideas and making space for new ideas to emerge, and also not judging those ideas the second they come up. I think that working with the Magician and having this as our theme can make space for hope. I don't think hope is necessary for action, but it can help and it can be nice. And if you're craving hope, try hanging out with the Magician for a little bit. I think that the Magician encourages us to not only name what we want and to own our desire, but also to consider all of the possible paths forward that could achieve those dreams. And there's no such thing as an idea being too outlandish or a fantasy being too silly or a longing to be unrealistic, right? The Magician is the yes and, like Jeanna was saying, that's exactly what we're talking about here. Feels wildly appropriate for Gemini season. But again, this is a great way to keep our minds flexible, to not like instinctively say, no, I can't possibly do that. It just really lets us think outside the box, which is a good thing for us to practice as the systems that we've been coming to rely on, or that we do rely on so heavily, might not be as available to us moving forward. So this month, think about the kinds of communities you want to thrive in, the kinds of worlds you want to live in, the kind of life you want to have. Dream big and let yourself think big. How would it feel to allow yourself to fantasize wildly about the kind of future you want to work towards, instead of cutting yourself off or telling yourself that your dreams are impossible or shaming yourself for wanting something? The Magician's a trailblazer, a world maker, a revolutionary. They do not take no for an answer. They're not even interested in no. That's not what they're about. Instead, they're about imagining whatever they want and finding joy in the process of wandering through their own mind. How can you activate your sense of possibility this month? And what would it look like to be open to something completely different or unexpected, to let your dreams take a different shape or to figure out a different shape for your dreams? In other words, hang out with Mercury. Mercury's great. Okay, next, I need to move the window so that I can see your faces when I tell you that I knew in my bones when you told me that Temperance was a card that you wanted to talk about. I knew Temperance. that little shit was going to show up in this reading, and it sure did show up right away as our truth card for this month. So
Yay.
thank you for doing half my job for me. That was great. I love
Yeah.
what you said about temperance. And yeah, it just felt really appropriate after I stopped laughing at both the magician and temperance showing up in this reading. Like the cards are dragging us. So yeah, no joke. Temperance is here as our truth card. Temperance literally is a truth card. As Bee said, it's divine intervention, divine messages. It can also feel like lucky breaks, right? We've got that kind of Sagittarius connection if that feels good for you. But there is this also sense of integrating everything that we've been through and holding space for magical and uncomfortable contradictions. So again, everything we were talking about at the beginning of this episode, thinking about that 5 energy, sitting in the messy middle, loving what is hard, embracing and understanding what is hard. Temperance follows death, right? This is the mess that comes after a major ending or a important adjustment or a shift or a release or whatever. Temperance gives us opportunity to be honest with ourselves about what helps you stay balanced. Everything Bee was saying about like the junk journal and creating your own sacred text and paying attention to what feels true, but also paying attention to what makes you feel grounded and safe. Really think about what works for you and what feels good for you, not what you wish worked for you, not what works for other people, not what used to work for you, but what is actually helping you right now. Maybe writing used to be a really great creative outlet. I was talking to someone in my Discord the other day that they used to write all the time and now it feels too hard and they're upset about that. And that's real. You get to grieve a thing that you don't have access to anymore, but it doesn't mean you can't find a different way to write or find a different creative outlet that scratches a similar itch. Try writing poetry, try writing a song, try writing a couplet, try writing a junk journal, right? Maybe video games feel super immersive and fun and a great way to get out of the world and get out of your head, but it can be easy to judge yourself for something that the world tells us is a waste of time. Video games are not a waste of time. I will die on this hill. Play is important, right? And maybe you wish you could be a certain kind of artist. I talk all the time about how I wish I wrote fiction. Why can't I just write fiction? Instead of telling myself over and over that I don't know how to do that, or there's no space for that, or it's a waste of time to try, just doing it anyway might feel really good. Temperance knows that friction is what propels us forward. It's what enables us to keep moving and to actually make progress. And so I think this card, as our truth for the month, is really asking us to acknowledge and process the fact that friction exists instead of doing everything we can to avoid the friction. What do you know about yourself, and how can you put that knowledge to use in a non-judgmental way this month? What makes you uncomfortable? And how does that discomfort create space for creation, or create space for discovery, or create space for progress?
Okay, so the magician read Jeanna and temperance read me.
Yeah.
And now Meg,
And
it's your
now,
turn.
are you ready? Are you ready? The dare card is the 4 of Wands, and it's here to read me.
I love the 4 of Wands.
I know, the 4 of Wands is beautiful. I think the 4 of Wands is very fun as a dare card because the 4 of Wands can really speak to a lot of different things. I think we often think about it as celebrating where we are, or like a major creative or spiritual or passion project oriented milestone. But I think there's also meanings that could connect to creative containers, to building things really intentionally alongside others, to finding outlets for our devotion or beautiful, solid places to put our devotion, to finding stability within our own imaginations, and also remembering how powerful we actually are. Mm-hmm. I talk to people every day that are frustrated and angry and heartbroken and scared, and that is real. And I talk to a lot of people that are numb or are struggling with numbness, or are finding it easier to just disengage or pretend things aren't happening instead of getting involved because it feels like the things that we're doing aren't doing anything. But this card, the 4 of Wands, can speak to how much strength is built through consistent engagement with our passions and through knowing where we belong and how we belong and why we belong there. I think this card really speaks to the kind of internal security that is created and sustained when we give ourselves permission to chase what we love and to allow ourselves to be devoted to what matters to us. Again, not to other people, not to the people around us, but really what's bubbling up for us personally. But I think the Four of Wands also speaks to that balance, because it's also about external security and building up, like shoring up walls and resources that help us do what we want to do. In other words, when something good happens, don't just celebrate internally for 2 seconds and then keep working. Text somebody, like get in your groups, like celebrate with the people that you love and care about the good things that are happening for you as a person, but also on a more collective level. Celebrate what the people around you are working on and their milestones too, and help teach others and remind others to protect their ability to be different or strange or passionate. I wrote this down. I'm going to say it. Fascism wants us docile, scared, submissive, and conforming. But I actually think the Four of Wands says that our strength is in our differences. And if people won't fuck with you, don't fuck with them. You don't have to let everyone into your safe creative spaces. You can sustain those with the people that you trust. So this month, I dare you to take up space. I dare you to speak your mind. I dare you to share what you're working on with other people, even if it's not perfect. And I dare you to protect your passion and keep it alive and thriving. Think about who you might be inspiring without even realizing it, and what that inspiration might look like, what little wildfires you might be setting just by burning brightly on your own. Where are you willing to stand your ground? And how can there be joy in survival, connection, and safety?
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I do think there is definitely, I was reading the other day about drag queen dance parties that were happening like in front of like government buildings as protest, and in that way that joy is an act of resistance, and that dancing is like, there's a quote about dancing and revolution that my brain is not connecting right now, but that's really what's coming to
Yeah,
mind.
what's that quote from the aid crisis? I can't remember it, but it's like, we would bury our friends in the morning and then
we
dance at night. Like, you know what? And there's another piece to it, and I'm absolutely botching it. We'll find it. We'll put it in the show notes. But I think about that a lot, because I think the joy is resistance and rest is resistance is really important, but it also shouldn't be your only thing. And I know that's not what you're saying at all, but I do see that getting, thrown out. And I think it's really important to let there be multiple pillars of our resistance. And I do think that joy and rest should be two of our pillars, but that gives you two other pillars to build some solid walls with. So
I found it. It's bury your friends in the morning, protest in the afternoon, and dance all night.
That's it. Thank you.
Which, bless those of you who have the energy to do all three in a single day, because it could not be me. I used to be able to stay out till 2 a.m. dancing. That no longer. But the energy of that, I love. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that was, Meg said something about comparing yourself to a previous version of yourself.
Rude.
I know. And I know that we have talked about that concept a lot, and just because, yes, of course. But I do think that that's really something to consider in May, is like, if you find yourself unable to do something that you used to love, or that you still feel is needed, or fill in the blank, then you have to make creative shifts to still be able to engage. And my only other thought, other than this is all so in line with what we were talking about at the top, and then all of these modalities together, was that the magician and Nietzsche's idea of becoming a yes sayer just felt so in alignment.
I wrote that down. I think I forgot to say it, but I'm glad you said that.
No, I wrote it the minute you said it. I was like, oh yes, okay, cool. Because that really does have, May has big junk journal vibes. It's like, what is speaking to you? What do you love? What do you want to do about it? And who else is around you, either doing the same thing or that can bolster you? Parallel play.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's also something in the fact that May, we're moving from the Taurus Scorpio to Gemini season. And we don't quite get the full moon in Sag yet in May, but that comes in June. But the way that moving from the composting of Taurus and Scorpio and then into the sharing and like, it's the fertility of like the air carrying seeds on the breeze, like that kind, and the pollination, as it were. That's the word I'm looking for. It's like we're kind of tending, the ground in the first half of the month, and then the pollination gets wild in the second half, astrologically speaking. So, but that feels very reflective of what you both have been saying. Yeah.
Well, I do kind of feel like we had our chat up front. Do we want to hop into cauldrons, or do you?
Let's do cauldrons.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's do it.
Cool. Well, for finances, I literally just wrote, "Hey, big spender." Like, I don't know what's about me and like the beat poets in May, but I'm going for it. So 5 definitely has big go for broke vibes. This is an energy that is beautiful and also a little dangerous. So just be careful in May with finances. 5 loves to gamble and 5 will pay to see the flop. So that's not something that I will do personally, but 5 will. So just thinking about our money and what we're investing in and how we want to use it. I watched a documentary yesterday on the rise and fall of NFTs, and it was really interesting. And what I took away from it, if you don't know anything about NFTs, I think
Bless you.
You're so
Preserve
lucky.
your peace.
Everything I know about NFTs, I learned against my will.
Of course, of course. No, it was really fascinating. I do recommend the documentary. I'll put it in the show notes. I think it was on Netflix, question mark. I actually cried while watching an artist have an NFT auction at Christie's. And he was like, "They're putting up my piece. This is my dream," like sobbing. And I was like, "Oh my God, I am so emotional." But NFTs started as a way to sell digital art in the same way that we sell and collect physical art. And so there is a part of me that's like, yeah, I totally understand that vibe. Why I'm bringing up NFTs is because what became really clear really quickly about that market is that it's all about collective illusion. That we are saying this thing has value, or, and that's what's happening with Bitcoin and other types of currencies as well. And it is what we have with money. Like, again, these are all collective illusions, but we're thinking about shifts. So what does it actually mean to start believing in a different collective illusion to the point that it could grow into something real? So 5 is seeing through to the heart of something with courage. So be really honest with yourself and your money in May about what you're investing in, but also what games you're playing. And there are so many stories lately of people hitting it really big in these niche market trends, not just NFTs, but the GameStop shorting and stuff with the stock market. I'm curious to see what the stock market does in May, actually. But really, these are like acts of people coming together to and bringing their money and putting it against the status quo, saying, if enough of us believe this is important, then who cares what the Richie Riches in the art world are saying? We have new money and we want profile pictures of monkeys. Like, I'm not saying it's smart or cool or whatever, but it is that idea of like something growing into it, but then you also maybe stay too long and then the market dips and then everything gets lost. So yeah, gambling vibes for May. Do with that what you will.
In a weirdly related way, I think that my advice is coming within the context of that. Within the context of the gambling vibes, I'm going to flag a few days that you don't want to do that. And where I think that overall, I would just advise being conservative with your money, small c, conservative with your money here, just to allow yourself some, not because we're like hunkering down, but because you need some buffer. And some of us may need more buffer than others with some things that are happening astrologically this month. So Mercury, there are a few different places in the birth chart and also a few different planets that have to do with different, it just depends on what kind of money you're talking about. But on a very local individual level, Mercury is local commerce, the crossroads, the exchange, small business. And so for a very literal, like what is happening with our money, I look at Jupiter or at Mercury more than Jupiter because it's interesting you were saying about the stock market because Jupiter is much more international markets, the stock market. But interestingly, this is Jupiter's last full month being in Gemini, where it is still ultimately answering to Mercury. So should be interesting. The 2 days to just flag here, May 12th, also the day of the full moon. Mercury in Taurus will be squaring Pluto in Aquarius. This may look like a power struggle, like having to track down child support or alimony or paperwork for a raise. Like this is big. You have it, I don't, you owe it to me, and such. And the full moon is a little chaotic with Uranus being involved. So things just may feel more in flux than they actually are. So again, it's a wave, we're riding it. And then on May 24th, Mercury is conjunct to Uranus in Taurus, I believe for the last time for like 80 plus years to come. So there may be an unexpected gift or an unexpected, again, Uranus, it can go either way. It can vacillate. It's that gambling energy. So Mercury being with Uranus may be an unexpected breakthrough or like huge windfall. It could also be an unexpected like expense or an unexpected draining or, you know, identity stuff. Like again, cybersecurity. My best friend works in cybersecurity. We have been getting updates on what's going on in that industry over the last few months because it's not really making headline news, but it's a whole thing. So just being, you know, extra conservative, extra mindful, password protecting, you know, dual authentication, be mindful of scams, keep it
Yeah.
on lock.
Don't
Yeah.
click on any buttons in your email that you
Don't
don't.
click report spam,
Yeah.
report phishing. Like I do that so much. Cultivate some skepticism.
Yeah, well, continuing the theme in truly the most ridiculous way, I pulled the Wheel of Fortune. So
Oh,
we're sticking hard with the gambling vibes and with the Jupiter
and
vibes.
Jupiter.
Like,
Yeah.
just make this shit
No.
up. Like, we're witches, who knew? So yeah, this just really, I feel like I almost don't even need to say anything else, but it does feel like there is kind of this back and forth, push and pull. I want to read this as like a collective, things are going to get easier kind of vibe and tell you we're all going to make it and it's going to be fine. And I do believe that. But I think that the way I'm interpreting this card for money right now is that there are things that are happening personally that might feel great, but that doesn't mean that there's not also lots of big wheels turning in other places and shifts happening that are absolutely beyond your control.
Yeah.
Treat yourself. Don't get me wrong. I always think you should treat yourself, but do it thoughtfully. It doesn't have to be expensive or even cost anything to bring you joy. And yeah, just be thoughtful and intentional about how you're spending and how you're budgeting.
Okay, for home vibes, I love the number 5 for home vibes. We think of 4 being like cozy home vibes, but 5 is like, okay, what do you want to do in the space now that you have it? So coming to mind was like a child's playroom, or I refer to my office as my magical laboratory. You know, like what are the spaces in your house or in your life that, or even in your body that make you feel really good and like you can connect to inspiration and magic and imagination all like super quickly, you know, and what supplies do you want in there? What are the activities that give you pleasure in the in-betweens or breaks? And then, yeah, thinking about like, are you sitting at a desk? Are you on the floor? Are you in a chair in the corner? And to engage with the senses, the 5 senses as well in your space. What do you want to see? What do you want to smell, taste, touch, hear? So this is really the month to focus on feeling really good in your space. And just a little note that this doesn't have to be a huge change. I mean, 5 energy would be like, let's have a yard sale and like get rid of all of our stuff and then buy new. So you can, yard sales are great. But just thinking like this doesn't have to be a huge or overwhelming change. And it doesn't have to be a capitalist money trap either of like, I'll just buy all new. But also you could if you wanted to.
Astrology wise, here I'm going to talk to the folks with rising signs who have the lunations really highlighting this area of life, like which in the birth chart is the 4th house of home in all of its many ways. Like it can look like parents, grandparents, elders, caretakers. It can look like the literal physical space that is home to you, people you live with, whether like children or roommates or partners or your pets. It can also look like roots, heritage, kind of the very recent lineage of home. And so we're going to talk to Leo risings and Pisces risings here. So Leo risings, the full moon in Scorpio highlights all of this for you. Again, Uranus is involved in this. So just be extra patient with yourself, with your loved ones, people you live with, just extra grace. Whatever havoc is being wrecked in your space, this too shall pass. Serenity prayer your way through it. It will be over soon. And then Pisces risings, the new moon in Gemini later in the month. something new is starting. I mean, my instinct, I work with a lot of writers and artists. So my instinct here is to be like, ooh, Pisces risings, you might have a new like project related to home or heritage or family coming through, a new like writing project, new artistic project. But this could also just look like the initiation of a really vital and vibrant conversation with loved ones about like meaning making, or you're dealing with family stuff. The topic of co-living with friends has been very top of mind for me, Meg, a few of our people who we are really talking about this with lately. So, talking about co-living with friends is also incredibly new moon and Gemini vibes, especially for Pisces risings. Yeah.
Yeah. The card that I pulled for our home cauldron is the 10 of Wands. And I know that your first instinct might be, but honestly, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense for a burnout card in this position. Like, the way that I would read this is actually, and the deck that I used is the Next World Tarot, which literally says completion on it and shows an artist proudly holding their finished piece. So the way I would interpret this is, you did the thing, it's beautiful, now please take a fucking load off. So when in related to home, I was thinking about, what about your home feels finished? What feels completed? What's done in a way that feels really good? Or what's just really inspiring your creativity? Like Bea was talking about earlier, what spaces feel really juicy and supportive and inspiring to you, and what does that mean? I think it's fine if it's okay if you decide that you eventually want to do more. I think especially if you're someone that like owns your home or like has a relationship with home that has the opportunity to be changing, it doesn't necessarily mean that you never do anything to that space again. But instead, I want you to think about what feels settled, what requires nothing more from you to function really well right now, and just letting yourself kind of celebrate and enjoy that, take pride in a job well done, and enjoy the process of creating new things in a space you've created.
I love that. So 5 is the marriage number. And I do love that May is the beginning kind of spring, summer wedding season. So that feels very aligned. Also, I wasn't planning on doing this, but key moment to plug my book, Marriage by the Numbers. If you are
Yes.
planning a wedding, I have written the book for you. That said, I do think with 9 being our ruling number for the month, I could see either swift endings to relationships, meaning like a fight that just goes from 0 to we are breaking up, or the next chapter in kind of messy proceedings. A cuter way to look at this energy when it comes to planning dates or gatherings or outings, see if you can find experiences to engage in together. So instead of going to dinner and a movie, maybe you go to a food truck festival where you can all pick different things or try little bites from a bunch of different trucks, and then go see an improv show or a piece of theater, something that's live and engaging, that you're with people, you're out in the world, and you're like doing some things that has big like pottery ghost vibes to it. And just really don't be afraid to try new things, even if you don't like them. And what came through was knowing that preference is a gift. And chances are, if you try something and you hate it, you'll probably get a good story out of it that you can tell people later. So yeah, what do you want to get into in terms of desire and dating in May?
I think the experimentation piece of that you're articulating, B, is really picked up with the fact that Venus is in Aries for the majority of May. Specifically on May 2nd, we have the inaugural Venus in Aries, Neptune in Aries conjunction. So in addition to being a great day for making art, also a great day for making love, but like in a way that is really good for, okay, how do I want to say this? Again, Venus, Neptune, long-term relationships, like committed relationships, very, very juicy, very like, let's put some energy back into the story. And in Aries, that can absolutely look like really experimental. Let's go try something new. Let's go roller skating. Let's like do something silly and fun just to do it. Like B said, you will get a good story either way. Venus, Neptune, when you are still dating or are in the early stages of a relationship, it can look not to say that it's absolutely going to be rose-colored glasses, like I like the idea of a person more than the person themselves, but that is absolutely something that we are more prone to. Venus, Neptune, and Aries looks very different than Venus, Neptune, and Pisces. Even the making love thing that I said, that sounds wrong. Because in Pisces, it's very like we are one, it's tantric, it's connection. And in Aries, it's like back of the car, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's just a different vibe.
Mhm. Well, once again, my card kind of just it sums up everything that we're talking about because I pulled Suspension, which is the Next World Tarot, which is the deck I used, named for the Hanged One. And the Hanged One has a number of different readings, both including what if you got a little weird though and tried something different, and also what if you calmed down and didn't rush things. First, if things have been feeling stuck, look at the situation through another perspective, challenge your own assumptions, or adjust your behavior in a way that might shift how conversation goes. But also, the Hanged One truly can be about inversions. It can be about trying something weird. It can be about kind of breaking out of your own habits or patterns, or where are you kind of just stuck in your lane. The Hanged One can invite you to mix things up, which could look like a fun date. It could look like trying something different in the bedroom. It could look like all kinds of different things depending on who you are and what you're into. So I won't get more specific than that, but have fun, kids. If you tend to be more quiet and let others take the lead, try to share what's on your mind more consistently. And if you're someone that finds yourself often talking a lot in your relationships, try to chill out a little bit and listen a little bit more. That might not apply to all of you, but it might apply to some of you, and that could be useful. The other way to see this card, or at least one other way to see this card, is that if it feels like you've been in a tough spot, or like you've kind of reached an impasse in a relationship or in a desire for a relationship or whatever that may be, the Hanged One is kind of like, babe, there's nothing you can do right now. You got to just wait it out. And that sucks. And that can be uncomfortable, especially if you're in a conflict point in a relationship and it feels like you want to resolve it, but it just needs space to breathe. The Hanged One is kind of like, you just got to kind of sit and wait and see what happens. Stop trying to force something to happen, because it will happen. It will come in its own time, but it's not something that you can really control. You're going to have to wait it out.
Last bucket. Sorry. Last cauldron.
Whatever.
This one, I have a little bit of an anecdote. So 5 is play, but also caution, right? So it's this one thing that I did want to say before I tell you the story is an idea for health that doesn't necessarily mean movement, but just your overall holistic health, is to find a daily pleasure practice or commit to, like, you can do a different pleasurable thing every day. But in May, what would it be like to have to do something that feels pleasurable every single day? So use all 5 of your senses, figure that out. But the story, so the last time I was in a personal 5 year, which I am in one right now, I traveled solo through Europe. I backpacked by myself for over 3 months. And when I was staying in a hostel outside of Cinque Terre, Italy, which literally means the 5 lands, I met a bunch of other travelers. So I ended up hiking with these 2 American guys and for a couple of days, and it was really, really fun. And at one point we came to a swimming hole, and we all ended up jumping and like swimming in the Mediterranean, and it was amazing. But when we hit the trail again for the next town, one of the guys was like, "Oh, that was really funny to watch you navigating the like moments before you jumped in the water." And I had no idea that anyone was watching me. But he was like, "You really wanted to do it, but I could tell that you were like really scared of getting hurt. So you were physically like cautious, but then you did it." And I was like, yeah, that is totally me. Like, I really want to do the thing, but I don't want to get hurt while doing it. And so I think there's something in that story for all of us this month. And that dichotomy of play and caution is like, you can take the moment to make sure that you are jumping away from the jagged rocks, you know, in order to have fun without getting hurt. And that is my thought for health.
I love that. That's
Yeah, I think that's
beautiful.
great.
No, mine is a very, again, once again, health stuff. We're going to look at Moon Mars just to be super mindful. The nice thing is that now that Mars is in Leo, the Moon Mars conjunction that we're having on a monthly basis is hot again, rather than the cold of Cancer and the wateriness and like things getting stuck in the body. Like, so Mars, Moon in Leo, the risk is overdoing it's overheating, it's not being cautious and then accidentally, I don't know, hitting a stone when you jump in the water. It's like it's the impulse, it's having no impulse control basically. So, we just want to cultivate a little impulse control, be mindful of what our limits are. B or Meg, one of you is talking about how like you can't necessarily do now what you could in a past life, like when you were a lot younger. And so Moon Mars in Leo just wants us to slow down and remember that, and also appreciate our body for what it is now.
That feels very relevant as I continue to recover from surgeries. Well, mine's kind of just echoing that once again, because I pulled the King of Swords, which really does feel like a figure of discernment and intentionality. What I was thinking about was that when it comes to your health, how you feel is really important, but it's not always the whole story. So trust your instincts, trust your knowledge, trust your experience, trust the wisdom you have about your body, and trust your ability to process information. But, and also, if you need to, advocate loudly for your own health, always really. Get a second opinion or a third opinion or a fourth opinion if you need to, and bring in someone to help you or to help advocate for you as needed. The King of Swords is really logical and clever, but I think their strength is knowing that there's always going to be something that they are not an expert in or that they don't know everything about. You are the expert when it comes to your own body, but also most of us don't know every single thing about bodies in general. I don't know who might be able to help you learn more about what might be going on with your body, and how can you build out resources for yourself that are going to help you know as much as you need to know about what's going on with your health.
I also don't know if I said the day of the Moon Mars conjunction. It's Saturday, May 3rd. I might have forgotten to say that.
I honestly don't remember, but now it's in here, so.
But it's here now. So
Cool.
Saturday, May 3rd is the Moon Mars conjunction, and use the discernment of the King of Swords.
Yes, exactly.
Wow, May.
Who is she? We don't know her yet. We'll find out.
We will find out. I do feel like Goblin Mode is still kind of the vibe. Like here at the end, it's like even goblins can be like, okay, maybe I won't do that because I don't want to take the hit. You know what I mean? Like we can be self-preserving goblins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Who don't bet all of our money.
Right.
Or like,
no, it has very big, like, know your lane, do your thing, have fun, be with your people, like, get outside, but like, yeah, don't bet the farm, as it were.
Yeah. The last thing that I want to say, full circle back to the real like danger and of what we were talking about at the top, is just that I do see in May, we're going to see the first clashes between resistance and power. Like throughout what every one of us was saying this month was really like, hey, 4 vibes. We talked about that a lot. The space between 4 and 5, like 4 vibes are coming with us into this 5 month in a way. So I think we're going to start to see kind of those first clashes. And so I would just really caution everyone to take care of themselves, to be really smart if you are engaging in forms of resistance that are really going to put you, your body, yourself out there. Yeah. I think even just the idea that we can't travel very well or like safely at the moment without feeling some kind of threat also means that if you are going to be in direct opposition to the powers that be, like, I just think it would be remiss of us not to say that there is a new danger. Maybe we've seen it before, but for those of us living now, most of us engaging in those acts haven't. And so gird your loins in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like the 4 of Swords feels very like, do the thing, be brave where you can, but don't do it alone. Like if you need to travel, if you are attending an action, if you're going to try something new, like as much as you can, don't go alone for practical reasons, but also that just feels like where we're going to find our strength and our courage and our safety is in each other.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you can find us online. Yeah. We're at callyourcoven.com. We are on Instagram. We're on Patreon. If you have a few dollars to support the podcast and you gain something every month, it's just like buying us a coffee. And you can find more information about all of us in the show notes, but also on our own individual websites. Oh, Meg, we might want to share.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be out
It'll
already.
have been out probably for a week or so by the time we
Yeah.
release this. But yeah, Bee and I put together a little something for you, a little treat. We really kind of leaned into the feeling of the podcast vibes. So it is very much a 90-minute workshop with a ton of resources on spiraling through 2025, on spiraling through the wisdom year, and ways to revisit your thoughts and dreams and hopes and ideas through the modalities and lenses of numerology and tarot. But yeah, we also make it very conversational. We share aspects of our own numbers and help give you some examples about what that might mean for you and what those things might look like. There's tarot spreads, there's prompts, there's all kinds of juicy stuff in there. And yeah, it's available now for you to pick up and enjoy at your leisure.
Yes. And we really did want to say, hey, it's not too late to think about 2025 as if it were January, because what the fuck was Q1?
Q1
And
was a
so
mess.
no time like the present. And I'll just share for me, like, I really do feel like within the last day, I got information I needed to move forward. So if that's where you are as well, is either still kind of in a waiting period or feeling like your year is just getting started, you're in good company, and may this be perfectly timed for you.
Awesome.
Jeanna, do you want to shout out anything?
Just the lecture that has been mentioned many times already. It'll be in the show notes, but I really do look to historical periods to give us indicators about what kind of overarching themes may be coming down. The technology changes, but people don't. So I find it very, very relevant and resonant.
While sending tons of love, courage, protection, bravery, fun, pleasure, goblin energy to a sweet coven for May, and we will talk to you in a few weeks.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye, friends.